Welcome, everybody. It is May of the Moderns time. We've got a great show for you today on the live stream. Thanks for being patient. We are going to welcome on our special guest who gave us prompt number 2, Bree of Loc'd Booktician, a fabulous channel. Her channel information is down in the description, so please check that, pop up another tab, and subscribe. And then we'll bring her on to say hello.
Hello. I like the way
Welcome,
you do that.
welcome.
That's cool.
What's that?
I like that, bringing people on. I just be like, hey, we're both here. What's up?
That's what I
So I
normally
like that.
do. Yeah. I figured there's a little
Switch it
more
up.
folderol, a little more ceremony for people who are, coming on and, giving me their time to try to prepare, have a topic. We're doing like a mini lecture thing today, just to get people down into the weeds of race and class for May of the Moderns. So,
Love that.
yeah. Just to give the set the scene, if you will, for May of the Moderns. The scope of the readathon is any book written or published between 1901 and 1945. We've got 12 participants on our people promising to read books. We've got 25 participants on the Storygraph challenge. The information for that is all down below. So whichever way you want to chuck in your books, I'm happy to have it. And Bree, why don't you give us your inspiration for your prompt and tell us a little bit
Oh,
about
I
your channel?
will. One second. I'm putting it on. I'm sharing all your stuff on my social medias. So I was like trying to do it like
Okay, no
really
worries.
fast. And then you called me out, and I was like, oh, snap.
I should have given you another minute in the behind the stage in the green room.
Oh
No
no,
worries.
oh no, it's okay. Not the green room. Love that.
Yeah.
Love
Well, I
the
just went
green
to a
room.
play yesterday, so I'm like, all the theater language is coming back.
Oh, I went to a play yesterday too. I saw
What did you
Clue.
see? What'd you see?
Clue. Clue.
Oh, nice. That's fun. I've
Yeah.
never seen that as a play. You've seen the movie. You've seen the
I
classic?
I love the movie. But watching the play, because my coworkers, their sons are like my nephews. They adore me as much as I adore them. And they were
Yeah.
like, you have to come to our play. It's Clue. I was like, I will
Oh,
be there. And they thought I was joking for some reason. And I showed up and I was like, oh my God, you were so
this
amazing.
is like high
And they were,
school or?
yeah, high school.
That's
They did
so
so
cool.
well. Oh, my babies. I felt like a proud auntie. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, we're my babies. Yeah, they did
Oh,
well. They
that's
did
really fun.
well.
That's really cool.
Now, as a terrible person to bring on, here I am trying to remind myself of my prompt.
So the
And
prompt, I will read it out for you. It is
yes.
timeless. Read a
Mm,
Black classic that discusses race and class in ways that are still relevant in today's modern world. And so I've got a few suggestions in the description from your playlist, and the playlist is
yes.
also in the description. Or if it's
Check
not,
out
I'll
that playlist.
pop it into the chat just in case.
Yeah. And
Um,
the question was like why I chose that as
yeah,
a prompt. I chose it as a prompt because just think about the world we're in right now. We're repeating a lot of mistakes and repeating a lot of things that we should have learned from. And it is, what is the word? Uncanny or whatever the word is.
okay, yeah,
Uncanny, how similar life is when we read Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, when we read any work by Anne Patry, The Street, when we read Black No More by George Schuyler, I think is his last name. Those those things are still in play today. Like there's no way we're going to escape things like that. Um, Even when we read The Bluest Eye, which is not a classic, but I'm mentioning her, not like in this time realm. It
right,
is a
right,
classic, but not in this time realm. But you still have authors like Anne Petrie who still talks about colorism and how things are being seen.
hmm,
So it was important to me to talk about like when we think about race and we think about class, which often intersects. Usually there it's really hard to separate those two in a lot of ways. um, how do we see that being played out now? I see it played out mostly in the current day of age when it comes to access. People be like, oh yeah, we have all these resources, but don't give people the tools to get to those resources. It's like, it's great to have these resources, but like, are you making sure those resources are accessible?
Right.
And are those resources accessible to Black and Indigenous folks? Are those resources accessible to refugees and not just white refugees? Like, who is these resources for?
Right.
So like those things is things that I think about, especially in my personal life. Have I been trying to help out a family member with some things, and I cannot Google in their state where to find these resources when they are, low income, a person of color, and a woman of color. Like, those intersecting identities already put you in such a marginalized state through an American lens, that people keep saying there are resources for those folks, but why do people have to rob Paul, pay Peter, and beat up John just to get these
I've heard that
these
before.
resources? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
why do
Jump
we
through
have
hoops.
to
Yeah.
fight all these folks? Like, I don't want to fight these folks.
Yeah.
So, those are just some things that I think about. Sorry for being so long-winded. It's just
No, you're
some
good.
things
So
I think about.
that's one of the things that is, I would say, different from the period understudy, because I don't think they had those resources. I don't think there was any sort of admission of responsibility to provide them in this period. And so that's at least one step that's been taken. But you're right. The next step is like making it accessible freely and not obvious. What's the word? Less strings attached, shall we say.
Yeah,
Less
yeah,
hoops to jump through. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm always like, just a side note, but it kind of ties in. When you have these resources and you're making them accessible, like, who's accessible? What does accessibility look like? Does accessibility means that it's accessible to people who are able-bodied? Does accessibility means that it is for people who are lighter skinned than me? Like, you have to ask yourself, in being accessible, is equity there? And I think a lot of people don't think about those things. And I, for one, side note, thought about it when I went to the what was it? The airport recently.
Mhm.
And I went there, and all I wanted was a ginger ale because I was about to throw up because I get like stomach issues, and I was like, that's Black folks elixir is a ginger ale. So I was like, I'm gonna need this ginger ale. So I go up to the counter and I'm like, hey, can I get a ginger ale? The man is like, the QR code is there. We don't do anything. You have to go on the QR code to order food. I
Okay.
said, what? He said,
Yeah.
yes, like, we don't do any of that. So I just thought about people who are probably 60 plus, don't know what the hell that is. I thought
Right.
about people who didn't have a
No
cell phone
smartphone.
and
Yep.
showed up with no cell phone, nothing. Like, I'm just thinking about like so many different
So many
people.
layers.
Look, your phone died.
Right.
They have chargers, like you can charge your phone. But what about people who don't have that? What if
Yeah.
somebody who broke it? Like, I was just thinking about, oh my God, this cuts off access to so many people. What about people who don't even have a card, like a card to make online payments, like, and
Yeah.
don't also have a shipping address to match that billing? It's just like
Yeah.
so many things that I thought about, and I was like, wow, great.
Yeah.
So you're
That
trying to make this easier, but for who? Like,
right.
who are you making this easier for?
Did you hear,
So
was it Sweden or Norway? Someone was some country was debating, we're getting off track here, but some country was debating having a cashless economy and going strictly to like cards and digital money only, basically. And that brought up a whole discussion. This was a couple years ago, about, well, what is that? Who does that exclude? Gosh, maybe we should think about that before we take that step in the legislature. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess that's, I mean, it's different. Credit cards are different and
no, but still, it
but
excludes a lot of folks, especially it excludes people who are about to use up their retirement to come to your country.
mm,
Like, what if
right.
my mom's generation, my grandmother's generation, they cash. They don't know
Yeah.
nothing about this card. What's this
Yeah.
card nonsense?
Yeah.
So you doing this card nonsense, and the boomers are like, so what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
So, it's those
Age,
things
yeah,
that to
age.
think
We
about.
haven't discussed age, so yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in your prompt, you mentioned race and class, and that was the first thing I was going to ask about. Why do you pair them together? And might it have something to do with this in the U.S.?
Oh, cast. A book that I definitely need to read, and everybody keeps telling me to screaming for me to read, and I will one day.
It's good.
I just feel like it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna wreck me. Like I see those tabs from way over here in another state. I feel like it's gonna wreck me, like The Color of Law did. The Color of Law tore me to pieces.
That's on my floor right now. Yeah.
Oh, The Color of Law owes me nothing. And it really took everything that I deserve. It just took everything from me, not everything I deserve. But I put them together because I feel like oftentimes people don't see how similar they are. Like in the Black classics that I've read, there's been characters who are Black and poor and have a different experience than the ones who are Black and maybe come from a little bit of money. And it doesn't mean that they're rolling in the dough. You know what I mean? Kim Kardashian style, but they got enough money to be comfortable. And you can definitely see the difference there. Even though at the end of the day, I always say, it don't matter what room you in, you're still going to be a Negro. Still, it makes life a little bit, I don't want to say easy, but you can navigate life a little bit more comfortably when you have some shmoney on your side. And I'm like, shmoney. Have some money on your side, and you can definitely see those differences. And when I'm reading Black classics, to know that these were written like the early 19th century, and to see that even play out at that time, and to definitely see it play out even now. I mean, there are celebrities who are my skin color, and sometimes I feel like they forget that they're Black, and then they are in a different class than a socioeconomic or like financial class than myself, but still they're put in situations where America reminds them real quick that they're Black. For example, the director of Wakanda, he got I forget his name. Yeah. Don't quote me on that. I feel bad.
I'm bad at film directors and movies in general.
Me too. Terrible. Yeah. Remember, I know what he looks like. You're not going to tell me. I know what it looks like. But names I always suck at. But the director of Wakanda was Black Panther. There we go. I keep saying Wakanda, and I was like, that don't sit right. Okay, Black Panther. I'm always saying different things than what it is, which is a shame, because I've watched that movie like 15 times. But anyway, the director of Black Panther,
Ryan Coogler?
Ryan Coogler. There we go.
There we go.
Ryan, my boy Ryan.
Okay.
The director of Black Panther, Ryan, was going to a bank, and he wrote down on the bank slip that everybody gets, like, I want to withdraw $15,000 or something like that. And the lady was like, how much? And he pointed to the slip. And the lady's like, And he pointed to the slip again, because in his mind, he's in line. There's folks behind him. He don't want people knowing.
Right.
He's withdrawing $15,000 from the bank.
Right. Safety first.
So he's like that. This lady goes to the back room, calls the police, saying that this man tried to rob them.
What? Oh my God. Someone who has an account at the bank is being turned into the kid selling cookies outside the grocery store getting called the police on. Jesus. I hadn't heard that. Was that in the past 2 years of pandemic, like, news?
No, that was like last month. You know what I'm saying? Modern times. So it's just like, how could you, like, to me, they usually go hand in hand when you talk about race and class. Like, there are things you definitely have to pay attention. And I think a lot of times, even when I'm reading current books, like books that just came out that I believe are gonna be classics, you still see the intertwining of race and class. A book, dang, I packed all my books, so I can't like go and get it real
That's
quick.
fine. Yeah.
One of them is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Perfect example of that.
Yeah.
So those are just things that I think
Well,
about.
yeah, it's another way to get intersectionality, right? Because it's all these isms that we deal with in terms of discrimination and class and race. They are associated together in a lot of cases because of how African Americans have been so marginalized and like what is the word? Besides discriminated against, like a much stronger word, stolen from and, backed into a corner and all those things for so long. So often race and class will go together in terms of caste. And what Isabel Wilkerson talks about is there were laws, there were codes of behavior, there was things done that made it so that that often African Americans in the U.S. are going to be in the poor class, right? But there's also the intersectional issues where you talk about tensions between Black middle class, Black academia, like all these different things, like education, sex, age, like you were talking about, that make for interesting literature, because then you start to see how one affects something, but the other doesn't. And so that makes for really interesting stories.
Yeah. I mean, you said it. You said it. I mean, reading The Color of Law, I was like, wow, y'all really out here using gerrymandering to be racist. Interesting.
Yeah. And
like
not only in voting, but also in school districts. That
in zoning,
I just read about in the Heather McGee book. Yeah.
Yeah, in zoning as well. It's just like y'all really out here like doing this and like still doing this. And the thing is, like, a lot of these laws haven't been changed. It's just like everyone's screaming around, oh, this exists, this is it, this is it, this exists. But I'm like, where are the lobbyists? What am I? Like, when are we gonna figure this out to, kind of get things out of there? Instead, we are wasting time trying to govern a woman's body. So we're losing track of the game. Like, not the game, but like the point to be had. It's like we're worried about other things that we should not be focusing on at this time.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Yeah. There's a lot of distractions going on with culture war crap that you feel like you have to deal with, and you're like, but can we not? Can we just ignore all those words that don't mean anything that they're trying to distract us with, and like govern and get things done and like meet people's needs? No, apparently not.
No. And I would really made me think like, wow, people are really just not focused on what they should be, is when I thought we were going to get like a good interview debate. I don't know why I thought that. I live in America. We were going to get a good interview debate when Judge Ketanji was just sitting there and being asked those questions. Instead, we have like toddlers in adult bodies asking these questions. And I'm just like, well, I guess that was it. I had to turn it off so many times because I was like, no one's going to ask a real question. like a real question. I was just so disappointed,
Missed
so
opportunities,
missed
unaccessed
opportunity. Missed opportunities. I was like, so we're not gonna ask nothing other than race. Y'all just gonna sit here and focus on the fact she's a Black woman the whole time.
Yeah.
As if she has not been doing this, being a judge for decades, and have other experiences and things we should be asking her questions about.
Can you imagine bringing Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson back to 1901 to 1945 and showing like her career and that hearing that people would probably go, yep. But her career exactly. Back to that period and have people go, wow, that's what's going to happen. That would be pretty cool if we could time travel.
Yeah, that would be cool. I wish we could time travel, but unfortunately it ain't happening. I personally I personally would rather be able to like jump like instantly,
Forward.
like teleport. There we go. I was like, what
Teleport.
is
Oh
it?
yeah. Like
Teleport.
transport rather than time travel.
Yeah.
Me too.
I don't
Me
want
too.
to go back and I don't
Yeah.
want to go forward. I'm
Yeah.
here right now. But I know. I don't need to know. Listen, when I'm dead and ashes and dust, let me be dust. I had my time. I did what I
Right.
was supposed to do. That's it. I'm out. But like I don't need to go back because if I go back, I know for sure I'm gonna get beat up because of this mouth. Right? This black body, this mouth going back. Oh, I'm gonna get beat up. And I'm not gonna know. They're gonna be like, look, we're gonna have to Billie Holiday her, and this is just what I'm gonna have to be. So I just no. But forward, I'm too scared.
Yeah.
I'm
The
too
unknown,
scared to
right?
go for. We're in a climate crisis, right? We
Yeah.
got a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to go forward and be seeing just dead things. I love plants, and just to see no plant, no ever is gonna just mess me up. So I'd rather just be able to be like a friend call and be like, "Hey, I want to go to this movie." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I'm in Minnesota, but I'll get there, boop, and I'm there in like 2 seconds." That's what
Right.
I'd rather do.
I do wish that as well. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So what about the period of study and what came before it? So my next like theme here, um, since when we focus on Black classics, our experience as Americans is mostly American novels. We'll just keep this to the American for this question. How did Black Americans experience the theme of this period, disillusionment, differently than others, differently from like white Americans in particular? Because so my thesis starting out for the moderns is that like the overarching theme is disillusionment, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had sort of empire and things were set and people knew their place, if you will. And then we had
Yeah.
the wars and we had like the suffragette movement and we had, like I don't know, things just being turned upside down. And that's what makes the literature so exciting. But how is that a different experience from what came before for African Americans in the time period? Because I've got two things basically I think of, not very limited, but my two things I think of from before 1901, Victorian and earlier. We get slave narratives. So we get people who are trying to establish just their humanity for other people. And those are very compelling. The other book that I read that was not American was The Adventures of Mrs. Seacole, which is someone who's like existing in the in-between spaces. She's a freed woman of color in Victorian England. She's living in Panama. She's like working as a nurse and a hotelier. Like she's sort of in between things and has some measure of power, but also is giving side eye to all these people coming through who are making remarks and making assumptions. And she's like, no. So like that moving into the modern era, what do you see as the differences? So we've gone from us back to modern. What about Victorian to modern?
Um, so there was a book I read. I won't say the book name because I recently found out the white man who collected the stories is openly racist.
Oh, okay.
However, when I think about this book, it's a collection of short stories. There are a lot of people, or I wouldn't say people, Black people, I want to say specifically,
Yeah.
who wrote stories during that time. And the stories that they wrote, in my opinion, was basically being like, how do we survive this? How do we help each other? And how do we recognize who is kinfolk and who is kinfolk? And those who know, you know what I'm saying there. And I found that to be very interesting because there were folks, how do I describe it? Reading those texts were very difficult for me
Mm-hmm.
because it was a type of African American vernacular English that I am not accustomed to. And it was like yes some, no some, and like things were said a certain way to convince white people that these Black people were uneducated and that they didn't know what was going on, but they had to do what they had to do to survive. So around that time, I just saw a lot of those type of narratives, like you said, slave narratives being written and spoken about. And really people having to like fight with all their might to get their stories published. Before each chapter, the author would describe of like how hard it was for each of these authors to get published or be seen or
Right.
anything like that. And then it kind of reminds me of like, you know, when we started to get into Hollywood, and I'm like just going thinking about Hattie McDaniels, when we started to get into
Oh,
like Hollywood and having like people like Hattie McDaniels and even black people who came before her trying to get into Hollywood and having her be the first black woman to get an Academy Award, and the white folks being like, you can't come here. If you come here, you know, we're going to riot, we're going to blow stuff up. And she had to get her award in the closet or in a theater across town or something like
yeah.
that. So it's like you
Well, Robeson.
constantly, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like this constant fight to be seen as a human being, like a full human being, not a quarter or three-fourths of whatever they said using you know, during slavery times. It's just like this constant fight of being like, I'm gonna make this be known, and I'm gonna make this be known through what, you know, whatever means necessary. And there's other things that I can think about, but I don't like to share that unless I'm around other black people, because I do think certain things should be gatekeeped. um but like there's just so many examples in literature and in media of this fight of to be seen.
Yeah. To be seen and seen as equal. So one of the
Hmm.
notes that I had, okay, I'm going to do the fancy thing here and put up this book, see if it works. Yes. Okay. It doesn't block our faces at least. Sorry, it's on your name. Trying to get it right in the middle. So one of the comments that you had in your Their Eyes Were Watching God discussion at one point was, oh no, this was mine. So yours is coming up. Okay, that was silly too.
Yeah.
So yours is coming up. We just
I was like,
decided
I
on
had this
June 6th.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't had this discussion. I'm reading your mind. But so I read this book for the first time last year with my friend Donna Sinclair, who's a local historian and politician. And one of the things that we thought was like very tricky, that goes right to the Hattie McDaniel getting credit for something, but also being a very tricky position, is the fact that in Their Eyes Were Watching God, there's a line that is danced over and back with reinforcing stereotypes and reclaiming culture. So is it playing to what white people want to hear, to have that sort of talk that is recognizably like Southern Black culture from 19th century that is assigned to people without power, basically, you know? Or is it reclaiming the culture and saying, this is how we talk. If you don't like it, like go somewhere else. And this is what we're happy with. It depends on the writer. It depends on the audience. Right. But yeah, how do you read that? What was the intent of Zora Neale Hurston? Like that was a really interesting one. That's why I have this book called Mamba's Daughters in my overflow stack. I picked up this random used book and I open it and it's like Bricks Without Straw. It's a classic. That one's written by a white dude. But I would look at some of the writing and be like, I like that. Even reading some of this dialogue makes me cringe, you know, like, okay, so some of that's white fragility because I'm looking back and thinking, God, this is terrible. I don't even want to hear about this or read about this.
Yeah.
But I also like, I'm not sure if the book is going to be worth anything if it's going to be in that register and written by a white guy in 1900, you know?
Yeah, I always feel how do I say it? Dang, I have a whole bunch of thoughts in my mind and I'm trying to like separate it. Yeah, I'm trying to separate it.
This is why I have to write notes.
Yeah, dang it, so good. So I'll just say like the pieces, and I don't even, they're not in order. That's what I will say. The first piece is, I'm a firm believer that if you are a Black person and you write using AAVE, whether it's a current version or one in the past, write it. It is not your job to make sure that it is consumable by white folks. Write it. Because a lot of times I feel like um, people such as Hattie Daniels had to shuck and jive for the white man in order to be heard. Even though if it wasn't for her shucking and jiving, we wouldn't have the black actors and actresses who are fantastic today. So I think a lot of people want to shun her, but it's like, you know, because of the sacrifices that she had to do, um, it wouldn't be like Angela Bassett, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be Viola Davis. So it's just, and it's a double-edged sword. I do understand that. But also when we think about when we think about Hattie McDaniels, one of the things I think about is like it is super unfortunate that she had to appeal to the white gaze and what white people thought of her just to pursue her dream. Like she always wanted to be an actress. And in her mind, in a lot of things, I assumed that it was by any means necessary, even if she had to continue to play Mammy. And it's unfortunate. But at those times, you couldn't be unapologetically black. You will be hanged.
Yeah.
White folks even nowadays ain't trying to hear that. They're gonna make up whatever law, use whatever law they can, that all these antiquated laws to make things happen. So the thing is that, but back then, listen, it was open. There was nothing hidden. You know what I mean? We got some, you know, what is it, covert stuff happening these days. When back then, that wasn't it. So I feel like even at that time, I felt like the criticism that Hattie McDaniels got was unfair because she was trying to do the best she can with what she had, even though it was not what people like. People ready to take her black card, ready to say this and say that about her. And I'm like, literally, if it wasn't for her, none of those people who came after her, even while she was alive, would have a shot at anything. And it's unfortunate it has to be this dog and pony show. But it's like that even in literature, you know, like there's a reason why black classics aren't seen on the same level as white classics. There's a reason why you can go to any Barnes and Noble in the tri-state area and get these nice, beautiful, cloth bound, all these just gorgeous covers of Jane Eyre, who's been dead for some time now. Charles Dickens, who's been dead for some time now.
We've got some good looking books though, so I encourage you. So these are the ones that are on Bree's playlist. So Cane by Jean Toomer, she has a discussion of, which was really good.
I do.
Not Without Laughter, which is the one that I'm going to be reading this month with Bethanne and Shanon.
Copy.
So we're excited about this.
There's another copy I like of this book.
A better one?
Yeah.
Okay. And Zora Neale Hurston. So I've got a different version of this one that
I have that version too.
That's pretty, right? I like that one. The last one I have not seen in real life. This is Black No More. That was my favorite of your books discussed because that was super interesting. It's speculative fiction where like people can change skin color. So we really dive into a little bit of the intersectionality of what skin color actually means for the society, whether it's like caste really, you know, like
and
so
I
that's
also
really good.
think for that book I also think for that book there's a reason why it was masked as comedy. Like when you read it, it kind of felt like it was just this comic strip. Because I guarantee you, if this author was like straight up like this happened and this and this and this and this and whatever, it wouldn't have been published.
George Schuyler, it looks like. Yeah.
Schuyler. I was calling him Schooler. Jesus.
Oh, well, now I know it's Schuyler sisters, so yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Where are we? Am I like I had a return point that I forgot. Black accommodation. So Black no more is what made me think about white fragility and Black accommodation. So the way that I would sort of answer that question about what's changed through these eras is maybe, so according to caste, there's always been white fragility. That's why we have a caste system, because the dominant, okay, so here's one of the really cool things that I got nerdy about in that book is dominant group status threat. And you'd probably really be interested in this too with your psychology background and like,
oh no, I've heard of this. I've heard of this. Yeah,
super fascinating. Yeah. So in the 19th century, taking out Reconstruction and like the tiny blip of all those things, I feel like the system was probably more stable because there was more violence and there were more laws and there was like, you know, the bad stuff was overt, like what you were saying.
In your face.
Yeah, in your face. Language, laws, rights, like none of it. And Black accommodation in that period is really, it isn't as developed because it was more like subjugation rather than accommodation. You didn't have a chance to cozy up and shuck and jive or do any of those things you're talking about because you just did what they told you or, you know, reacted to survive in whatever situation you were in. I think the modern era difference in that is that because in some places it was different and there were like, what's it called? Asymmetric rights, like different places. The North wasn't heaven by any means, but there were different rights and different discriminations in different places. So there was more room for play. There was more room for accommodation. And what I mean by that is what you talked about in Invisible Man as erasure. So to survive, you would erase your identity, do what you needed to do to survive. But then you might have the ability to carve out like your own type of world, your own neighborhood, your own you know, community that could have a life of its own.
Yeah,
a little different. But I'm bringing in my notes because when you guys kind of look at these discussions and sign up for Their Eyes Were Watching God, it'll be really good.
Yeah, I'll try to put that to set the reminder up either tonight or tomorrow. I'll try to do that.
Yeah. I know you're busy today, so it's no worries.
Yeah.
People just mark your calendar for June 6th because that's like the date we're gonna aim for.
I wrote it down, right? Hold on.
Somewhere.
Yes, I did. I wrote it down.
So when I say disillusionment is sort of the governing theme of the modern era and things getting turned upside down, and how is that different for Black folks? I feel like there is no disillusionment because there is no illusion. You were already there. You were already at the world is a dangerous place. And so maybe it's a different governing theme for African Americans for that era. Maybe it's, what would it be? Let's take some comments. Let's take some ideas from people in the audience because I'm at a loss. This is definitely like I haven't read enough to throw something out from the back of my brain.
I always feel like I don't know how to say this. I don't know, nicely? I guess I'm trying to think.
Cursing is allowed. Cursing is allowed.
I have never in my life growing up experiencing this body, this human experience as a Black woman ever forgot that. Even as a child, I knew what it was like to be a Black person, a Black little girl, and I knew how people would treat me. I knew immediately when I was no longer a kid. I can tell you the experience at 5 years old when I knew nobody is looking at me as a kid anymore. I can tell you exactly where I was at. So for me, when white people be like, oh my God, I had no idea it exists, I'd be like, what illusion are you living in? You know what I mean? Are you delusional? Like, what's going on here? Because I'd be like, huh? They'd be like, oh, I just didn't even know. It's like,
how, right? How?
Like, how did you not know? But I also understand, I learned this years ago that still stick with me, and I get so mad about it when I think about how in our textbooks we just gloss past all the atrocities that white folks have done, and then we're like, this great land of whatever, and not realizing what you did to Turtle Mountain, to the people who inhabited Turtle Mountain before it is now known as the United States. So to
Oh,
me, I'd
Turtle.
be like, Turtle Mountain, yeah, where we're
Scotland.
at. So it's just so just it's I just get very confused when a white person tells me they have no idea or they didn't know. To me, that's willful ignorance.
Mm.
That is a delusion,
Mhm.
because you are clearly not understanding how the word works, and then that right there lets me know the amount of privilege that you have been afforded, and
Yeah.
whatever privilege that looks like. So to me, I'd be like, when we think about those times, in literature, when Black people write, they are aware of what's going on in the world. White people write as if there is nothing happening to them other than that event, other than what is happening.
Mm.
We see it even with Pride and Prejudice. When she wrote that,
Right.
it's only about what's happening in there. You
Right.
know
This
what
is
I
the
mean?
drawing
So
room.
it's
There's
like
nothing happening outside. This is the drawing room in the park and
nothing.
back to the drawing room. Yeah.
That's it. So I'm like, how in the world? So for me, it's been so refreshing. And this is my second year now reading Black classics every month, of being like, wow, these Black folks, they knew what was going on. Like, this ain't just some random stuff. Like, my granny always be like, you know what, Bree, that sounds great, but I don't think, you could do that. Even when I'm in mixed company and there's lighter skin tones, even of Black folks who are lighter skin tones than myself, and people want to participate in an activity. One of my friends is like, Bree, it's too dark for that activity. Like, that can be a real life dangerous thing. Bree could be murdered or died if we did something like that. So it's like, no one is I have
Yeah.
never in my history of living, almost 32 years old, of being like,
You young thing, you. Oh my
I am
goodness.
not young. I'm getting older. Yes, I love
Yeah.
that for me. Don't look at the wrinkles. But what I'm saying is, I just I just don't understand it. I get very confused. And then, like you were talking about earlier, white fragility, I get especially white cis heterosexual women crying all the time to me, and I just be like, huh. Or I get the most heat from gay cis men, and they be feeling like they're more disenfranchised or more discriminated than me. And I'm like, while you're out here using Black women African American vernacular English, like, you have to acknowledge your privilege. Like, yes, you are a gay man and life is rough, but I'm also a Black woman and life is rough. But you can't complain, you can't compare you're still a white man. Like, why aren't you getting that?
Right.
So it's just so many levels of things that I just be confused at the delusions that I'm watching. And I'm using delusions in the way that pop culture is using it, not from a
Right.
therapeutic standpoint.
Right.
But I just wanted to say that, make that clear. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's now. That's still going on now. So what about what about if we focused on like the flowering and expression and blooming forth, like the golden age of Harlem Renaissance? Because that's one of the things that
Yeah.
is known, even for people that are living in the Matrix, known about and celebrated, and it's music and it's dance and it's other types of culture that I'm not as keyed into, and literature. And so maybe that's the governing theory, is like coming into their own for this period and owning it and just sort of like putting it out there.
Yeah, the Black classics written in that period is wonderful, because you just see all these Black people creating their own, like, Black Wall Street, like creating their own wealth systems, and like figuring out a way to, you know, create things that are by Black people for Black people. Even though they're going through a lot of struggle, I'm not saying the struggle is removed, even though, wealth, we talked about class, is being introduced, but still it's just a beautiful thing to watch how things is how the narrative have changed. Like you were saying, we went from like slave narrative and like people fighting their with all their might to be seen, and then we, you know, continue of them trying to, you know, break out, and there's starting to be a little bit more acceptance, and then we go to that Harlem Renaissance. I'm like literally jumping time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we're now to where, you know, things are just what they are. Black people don't always have to write about race now. They can write about whatever they want to write, which was really not. I haven't read one Black classic that doesn't discuss race and class.
Right.
At some level.
Yeah. Maybe, so the tech of today, my envisioning is in early stages here, but like modern era, maybe it's like there's one stage because of the media, and the Black culture, literature, music, like has like staked out a place on that stage and is like fighting for their area to be seen by everybody, right? But what we have now is that everyone has different stages that they're looking at. So there is no, I mean, unless you get super, super up here, like there is no like one stage that will hold people's attention. And so the market is fragmented and media is fragmented. And so it's sort of a different fight, I guess, for attention.
I wouldn't even say it's fragmented. I just watch, okay, let me preference this. Let's think about music.
Okay.
Let's just stay on music. I've been listening to my grandmother and my mother's music my whole life, especially when it's time to clean. That's been a thing. It's time to clean. They playing the music. You understand? So now I'm listening to Black people currently, like, you know, young pop artists, rap artists, whatever, sample them, and I'm seeing it being recycled and them changing it into something else that is an expression of what Blackness is to that person. But then I'm seeing it stolen and replayed into people who are not Black. And then
I just learned that term like last year.
Right. It's just turning into something of people who are not Black. And the people who are not Black is getting so much accolades, so just it's being so popularized that now the what these people have, these Black young people have created is now being deemed as, oh, that's pop culture. So now you have Black people fighting to constantly reinvent themselves while other people are co-opting their shit and then keep telling them it's pop culture. So I'm like, what is going on? So like, to me, it's like Black people are here and Black people, no, seriously.
Yeah.
It's like Black people are here, Black people are doing things, but it's like the phrase that I always say when I see it, I'd be like, man, we can't have shit. Well, I mean, we can't have shit because every time things is being taken and co-opted and whatever, which is why I will die on the hill of gatekeeping. I will die on it because I feel like, you know, Chinese cultures can be gatekeeped, the things that they believe. Indigenous cultures around the world can gatekeep in the things that they believe. Latinx cultures around the world can gatekeep in the things that they want to believe. But the moment Black Americans, we're talking about the American experience, Black Americans want to gatekeep, then it's people are losing their shit. We even see it on TikTok. A Black woman, specifically Black women, will create this dance. It goes viral. The white person will do it, and then it's like that Black person don't even exist. So it's just those things of being like, you know, how many times do you have to recreate things for them to be seen as yours?
Yeah. That's a really good point. Appropriation, co-opting. I think it starts getting into discussions of privilege and like the habit of privilege and saying, oh, you did this work, I'll take that. I mean, that's just the mentality of 100 years ago, right? It's just straight up to now. It's just continuing, but in the free market way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything wrong with your hair.
Sorry, I was like, doing some weird thing. I was like, what's going on?
I like your shortcut. I do, personally.
No.
I was like in one of your lives one day. I was like, oh, okay, I see you, shortcut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to go shorter, but now I'm glad I didn't. So, do we have questions from the audience? We have people who have been poking in. Paul Maron was earlier talking about my side-eye comment. Mr. Aurora Suri was here. Nia was popping in to say hello.
Hello.
Listening, but can't chat much. She's probably preoccupied with Loki.
Okay.
The family.
It's okay.
Yeah. So let's see. Those are my sort of big theme idea questions. Do you have anything that pops to the forefront of your mind about the modern era, what people were writing about, what people should look for if they're going to choose a book for this readathon for your prompt?
Oh,
You
yeah.
obviously already got suggestions and they're down below, but like maybe like what to pay attention to, or I don't know.
That's what I was gonna say. When I read Black classics, I ask myself, who was this book written for? And there hasn't been a Black classic that I was like, this was written for the white gaze. Like, there's a lot of books that's came out in the last 15 years by Black people that I've read that I'm like, who is this book for? Because I'll see them explaining something that you should. Now, you ain't got to explain it. But I see them explaining something that Black classic writers did not. It was just what it was. And that was just it. So ask yourself, one, who is this book written by? And ask yourself if you see similar themes to now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that helped me connect more with the text.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I read The Narrows. I was like, how have I seen this relationship play out now? Even in my personal life. Like, how have I seen this happen? Or like, when have I noticed, when have I seen white women tears completely, destroy a Black man?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it.
Yeah.
We've seen it. We've seen it, y'all.
Yeah, that's
Emmett Till.
Yeah.
That's one. Emmett Till. Just in case you didn't know, Emmett Till.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to ask myself of like, how is things being, and also another thing I ask myself is, would this book even be published currently? Do you think if this author was alive and then these times and wrote word for word, would you think that book be published? So those are some things. I used to compare them to white classics. I think that was like the first thing I did, like the first book I read. But then I was like, that was useless for me because I felt like Black classics is in a league of their own. So I was like trying to compare, but it is what it is. I wish I had, like I said earlier, I wish I had these beautiful cloth bound
I don't have those in any. Yeah, I
them.
don't have those for any of my books. They're all used, like what I find at the store.
Listen, I love a used book. I do.
Yes.
I just be wanting something special for my Black classics because there's not a Black classic I haven't read, and I've read over 20 of them that is not 5 stars. Sorry.
Yeah.
Up there. I'm like, man, this is great. And then I'm like, I just want a special edition of them. I don't. Like, I have a section of James Baldwin's books. I think they all were reprinted a certain way. And I have like all those reprinted versions.
That's nice.
But I love James Baldwin.
Yeah.
That's just me. Love. Wish I got a chance to meet him when he was alive.
I know. I wish he lived longer.
I know.
So on your second question, you had a comment during the Invisible Man discussion about who defines reality. And if I say there's a riot is the quote that I took out. And I was like, gee, I can't imagine something like that happening today in our different newscasts, different like communities. Someone saying what I say defines reality and having that effect on the community is like, still happening.
Yeah, it still happened. That's why that's one of the things that makes Black classics in the era that you're having for May of the Moderns be so interesting and also sad. It's just like damn, the similarity, but it's just like, but that's also really sad.
Yeah. Relatable but sad. So like
relatable but most definitely sad. Yeah. I don't know where those discussions be coming from. Josh was just in a discussion with me for the book that we just read for April. I had to remember which month that came before us. April. And it was Beloved by Toni Morrison. And Josh was like, "Oh yeah, where did you get these questions?" And I was like, "Oh, I just made them up in 15 minutes." And he was like, "I thought you got them from somewhere." I was like, "No, I was just like quick." And that's only because it's Gemini. I was like, "Oh, I gotta make up some questions," but I forgot about that question. So thank you.
Yeah. No, you had lots of good stuff. So definitely go check out the playlist.
Yeah.
We're coming up on the hour, and I know you've got somewhere to be, so I'll try to like close in here. We've got coming attractions for the readathon Tuesday. Tuesday night is going to be our first Buddy Read discussion of the book. Which book is it? It's All Passion Spent by Vita Sackville-West. So this is a like well-to-do white lady in Britain. Very different, but
that's what they say, well-to-do.
What's that?
I said, that's what they say, well-to-do. I just had to tell my friend mom, who loves Agatha Christie, about Agatha Christie. She was heartbroken. I felt really bad. I was like,
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in her books. I haven't read any Agatha Christie books, actually. I've just heard stuff, so you know, not my priority. Speaking of which, I've heard a lot of things not my priority. I'm sorry to say, Sookie Stackhouse. I know you love her.
I love
haven't read any of the books.
Absolutely not. Every book, it's like I'm fighting myself not to give it a one star. Every book, I'd be like 2, Bree, 2.
And why are you doing it to yourself?
Why, Bree? Because I'm a completist. That's why. Okay. My friend wanted to read this, and she was like, "Oh, I really like the Sookie Stackhouse," and I was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to read them." Went in blind. I knew nothing about this lady. Didn't read nothing. I went in blind, and now I'm like, every book is racist.
Yeah.
Wow. And you kept publishing them. They kept approving it. How? I know how, but it's taking me through it, and I got to read 2 of them next month. But I'm going to finish them because I'm no quitter. I'm going to finish it, and I need to know if it gets better. I just need to know. Huh?
You do have company. There are other booktubers that I follow who also are doing like the Charlaine Harris read through, and I don't know what lens they're doing it with, but yeah.
It's giving racism, every book. And then let me tell you how my heart was broken.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me tell you how my heart was broken. I found out this TV show that is not really good, but somehow I keep watching it because
I'm watching one of those too. Okay.
It's called Aurora Tea Garden. I keep watching it on damn Hallmark Channel, which is also it's giving Whitey McWhite. And I am watching it, and then one day I go, was that Charlaine Harris, the writer of this book? And I have faithfully never missed an episode of movie, been watching it for years. And then I find out the lady who wrote Sookie Stackhouse wrote the
she's the writer of the series.
I feel bamboozled.
Yeah.
Ugh. So that's my TED Talk.
Hallmark Channel and erasure. That's the next topic. Like, yeah.
Listen, Hallmark said, look, if you ain't white, you ain't right. We're not putting you on the channel.
Even when they have people of color who are doing roles in their movies and main character roles, they're like whitewashed in my
super. They got straight long hair, and I'm like, how that lady who looked like me got straight long hair?
Yeah. Yes, and I've really learned a lot from your and Shay and Britt's discussion of interracial romance and Shonda Rhimes versus like black romance and black love, and that whole discussion, like that's been really interesting. Like not knowing anything about that, like to learn. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good channels to follow.
We have another we have our tomorrow at 7. So
oh, okay. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
You got a lot of time to do. Okay, tune in.
Yeah.
Ross is here to say
hello.
Really discussion. Thank you. Nia didn't know.
I know, Agatha. I said not Agatha. And I found out about Agatha because I found the original copy and then there was none at a friend house. And I was just looking at her parents' like bookshelf. I found the original copy and the title, and I said, "Is this real?"
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, are the parents racist? Like, I was like, what's going on here? And I looked it up, and I was just sitting there in the room I was in, devastated. My friend came in. I said, I need a moment to myself because I just felt so devastated. Like this whole time, at that point, I probably have read at least 10 Agatha Christie books by then. Love the woman. And I was like, oh yeah, love a good mystery. Because I don't be caring about the other stuff. I just be like, ooh, the mystery. And then I'm like,
yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, that really hurt me.
Live and learn and make different decisions. Hey,
yeah,
we'll do it.
Yeah, we do it. We do it. We do it. You catch that replay, bookish.
There you go. So thank you so much, Bree, for being here and talking to me today for the second prompt about race and class. Got some good discussion, some good recommendations.
Anytime.
Find those books.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So we'll see you all later and have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching.